All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA video. Got a small three-game slate here for you guys. With that, it should be kind of a straightforward slate. What are your kind of initial thoughts for the slate that we have?
Yeah, I mean, I usually don't like small slates, but I do kind of like this one. We have the games kind of staggered, so we have the opportunity to do some late swapping. All the teams are pretty healthy, so we don't have to worry about too much news. I think the one piece is Keegan Murray that we're going to keep an eye on the Kings, but it's not too major. But yeah, always got to love when you get the battle of Jokic and Embiid. Embiid's definitely got the best of that matchup over the past few times these guys have met. Probably going to go back there tonight. A little bit surprised that he's not even more popular. But yeah, I'm kind of a medium to big slate guy, but this three gamer actually feels pretty fun, at least from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah, personally, my best slates have been these ones that are like 4-2 games, which if you had told me that at the beginning of the season, I would have probably laughed at you because normally they're not appealing. But I think that's part of it. Like everyone else is kind of having the same thoughts where they're like, yeah, I don't really want to play. And maybe that's the edge, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we see ownership concentrate on certain plays. Like tonight, we got like 45% Grayson Allen on FanDuel. Pat Beverly's over 40%. It's like when you don't have options for value, it's so easy to get different. And I think we kind of take that for granted sometimes. But yeah, on a slate like this, I mean, I don't know. I want to play. I'm doing a 25 max tonight. I'll kind of mix and match some of these pieces, but there's no like real standout value other than maybe Daniel Tice for the Clippers because there's no Zubac. But yeah, as far as the three gamer goes, definitely one of the more interesting ones. And all the games should be competitive too, which is nice. I don't think any of these games look like blowouts right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Looking at like kind of the news wise, we didn't really get that much news. I would say the biggest news is that everyone from Denver is going to be active. Keegan Murray, we're waiting out for the Kings. That could shift some stuff. Zubac is out for the Clippers. And then I will say Philly being as banged up as they are is somewhat intriguing to me. With Robert Covington and also Melton still out, I do think there's a slight edge with Batum, specifically on FanDuel, where he's 4.7. On DraftKings, he's probably priced a little bit too high. I know you kind of mentioned Patrick Beverly being chalk on FanDuel. Let's just start there with the Sixers. Is there anyone here that you see as a true must play on tonight's slate, or is it just kind of fill in as need be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be mostly on FanDuel tonight. My favorite play on the slate's Embiid. I know he's expensive, but he's almost 2 full points higher than Jokic in terms of OF index rating. Only 19% on FanDuel right now. Again, not a ton of value we love on the slate, but I'm loading up on Embiid. And it's also nice that Daniel Tice on FanDuel, you could play him at power forward. So that one chalky piece of value I'm actually comfortable with, I'm still going to be able to get to. But yeah, man, I mean, we just look at the game logs or the recent matchups between these guys. So Jokic is the better team player. I mean, with Murray out, he's producing at the same level as Embiid. But with Murray in, Embiid has been getting the better of this matchup consistently. He's had some massive, massive games against Joker recently. I'm kind of expecting more of the same tonight, especially with this game being in Philly on the East Coast. Obviously, Joker at low ownership makes some sense as a pivot, but I mean, Embiid doesn't seem as popular as maybe he should be here. So for me, that's kind of my hot take. I mean, oh wow, you're playing the MVP a lot. Like,
Yeah.
wow, great job, man. But yeah, I will say I do like Batum. I mean, he's going to be lower owned on DK, kind of a low floor. But yeah, I mean, he's pushing 27 to 30 minutes a night in competitive games. You brought him up. I do feel better about him than I do Pat Beverly, certainly.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, Oubre is going to be starting. Hasn't been great with that starting unit. So, yeah, I guess it is Batum for value for me more than anything. But I'm really going to load up on Embiid, and I hope this ownership holds because, yeah, he's 20% on FanDuel. I plan to be like between 60 and 80%.
Yeah, that does feel like it's a little bit too low given the slate that we have because
Right.
like it's like that's you're choosing who to pay up for. There is enough discounted plays where you can make him work. So that's definitely interesting there. And so just like that is probably an edge that we're gonna get on the slates where he's probably not as high owned as he should be on a small 3-game slate.
Yep.
And then let's see. So we'll talk about the Clippers a little bit here with Zubac out. I feel like that's the biggest kind of piece of other news that we got. It doesn't really change much to me. I'm a little bit surprised that Plumlee, not as chalky as I would have thought, specifically on DraftKings, where he's about $500 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. Only projected at 17 minutes. Obviously, that's a big part of it. And then also Daniel Tice I think a lot of people are just naturally going to him. It's much easier to fit him in on FanDuel, like you mentioned, 56% owned. Is this a spot where maybe it was kind of like yesterday where I was on the Discord saying, and it didn't really work out, but we had Thad Young chalk and Jonte not as chalky. And I think they kind of finished around the same. Is it maybe a situation like that where we just play the lower owned guy? Hopefully, maybe Plumlee gets more minutes, or is it just eat the chalk and then maybe get a little bit of Plumlee as well?
Well, yesterday was interesting because I think we projected that to be super chalky, and then Porter got the start. So
Yeah.
everyone pivoted on into Porter, and then Thad ended up having the better game.
Yeah.
But not everyone late swapped. I know we had NFL playoffs going on, so it was like even the sharp people like who were pivoting to more Porter weren't necessarily rewarded. I stayed on some Thad as a
Yeah.
pivot, and those were actually my lineups that did better, surprisingly. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, Porter was over 50% on DK. Shout out to Chuck, who took down, I think, the $4.20 max yesterday with
Yes.
his lineup. Two snowflakes in that lineup. He had Porter and Javon Carter with his 8 points. But I think that's a good thing to bring up on this slate because, I mean, you look at Javon Carter yesterday. He's not a play anyone wanted. He was 1% owned. He didn't do anything. He finished with 8 points, but by getting that mid-price guy into his lineup in a large field contest, he was able to pay up more than a lot of the other more generic builds, and that got him to AD in the late game. He had Bridges in there, a few other guys that were kind of high priced. So it's not always that these cheap plays are great plays. It's what they
Yeah.
can afford you. And on a 3-game slate like this, getting that extra stud into your lineup could be very valuable. So not only wanted to shout out Chuck, but just bring that up as kind of a point of emphasis in terms of
Yeah.
strategy. But yeah, man, I think it's interesting. I'm pretty confident Tice is going to get the start. Like, if I go heavy on Tice and then they start Plumlee, I'm going to kind of be screwed because I'm loading up on Embiid.
Yeah.
Plumlee does not have power forward eligibility, so I'm going to be end up stuck on like Amir Coffee or something like that, which is going to
Yeah.
suck. But yeah, I think you go with Tice, and if you're MMEing, you probably pivot a little bit to some Plumlee lineups. I do think he has upside, especially if we were to see Tice get into foul trouble. But yeah, I mean Tice. There was a point earlier in the season where Ty Lue was kind of sour on Zubac, and we actually saw some big games out of Daniel Tice. He's
Mhm.
not the best player. I mean, people like to joke about him, but at the same time, I mean, in terms of fantasy point per minute, he is still half decent. So I don't mind getting to Tice's chalk. I do think it's much easier on FanDuel, but again, on a slate lacking value, you can play two centers on DK, and if he's only 25% owned, I don't mind getting him there too.
Yeah. It's not a terrible matchup going against OKC as well. So it does feel like a slate where I do want to get one of them. It's just, and obviously looking at the model, it clearly likes Tice better, but at the same time, $500 cheaper or so, I guess a little bit more than that. DraftKings comparing those two, like to me, I won't stress about it. Like if I only have 4K left over and I can't fit Tice, I'm fine ending up on Plumlee. Obviously, Tice is the better option there.
Yep.
But let's just kind of do a game by game breakdown then, just because it's a 3-game slate. I think that's the easiest route to go.
I like it.
So we'll start out with the early game, which is going to be Denver versus Philly. That sounds weird to say with Denver, but we'll start out with the Denver plays. So basically, everyone is going to be active for Denver that we would care about. So with that, it kind of feels like everyone is probably correctly priced. Maybe Christian Braun is a little bit too cheap for this slate. He is pulling in some ownership. Maybe Peyton Watson, we're getting a little bit of Reggie Jackson. Everyone is flocking to. That's kind of the obvious value, specifically on DraftKings. DeAndre Ayton a little bit. So like, this is a weird spot because clearly we got to eat some chalk, but it's just figuring out which chalk we should eat. I would say Reggie Jackson, I'm going to assume is the chalk you would eat. But after that, who do you like next for Denver in terms of value plays that you can get on, whether on FanDuel or DraftKings?
I like KCP. I like that he's going to play over 30 minutes. I like that he's been taking shots. He's gone 4 straight games now where he's hit at least 2 3-pointers, which is good to see. Decent matchup for shooters here. Obviously, with Embiid in the paint, it makes things difficult. Jokic is going to do a lot of facilitating, so I like Caldwell Pope to see a few open looks here. But he's much lower owned than Reggie Jackson, honestly. Like, yes, I agree on a slate where we have no value, it makes sense to play a $3,900 Reggie Jackson on DK. But at the same time, I mean, he's over 50% owned. More often than not, he's not getting to 20 fantasy points with Jamal Murray in the lineup. So if you could find ways to get elsewhere in tournaments and high risk contests, I think it makes sense. He's kind of that piece of chalk that you probably have to eat in low risk and cash games and just deal with it. But if I could find enough salary to maybe get to KCP, I know KCP is shooting guard. Jackson is point guard. I really think that's like a strong direct pivot. But yeah, I definitely trust KCP more than Watson or Jackson. Obviously, those guys have upside sub 4K, but if you could find the few extra hundred, we know KCP is going to see the minutes. We know he's going to be taking shots here. So that's a play I'm definitely going to have a lot of on FanDuel where he is chalky, but on DK, I actually really like him as kind of an ownership pivot.
Yeah. Any love for the other kind of sub 4K plays? Because I can make a good argument that it's kind of like the Clippers situation where I said I kind of want to end up on one of those centers. Like I could make a good argument that like Braun is a decent play tonight, projecting at 18 minutes. You're not hoping for much at 3.6 on DraftKings specifically. Same thing with Peyton Watson, who I maybe like a little bit more going against Philly, but that time in and time again, that feels a little bit too thin. Like that'd be more matchup dependent. And I would say like I could probably get your answer. FanDuel, it's Braun. And then because Watson's a little bit priced up, is that kind of just the approach there? Is it just we probably don't need to play those? Maybe let's try to find value elsewhere, other than obviously Jackson on DraftKings.
I mean, honestly, there's not much value elsewhere. So I do think you could mix them in. Like, I have trouble seeing more than one of these three go off. That's Watson, Braun, Jackson. So maybe set a rule. But I don't mind Braun or Watson as kind of pivots off of Jackson. They're easier pivots because they are priced closer to Jackson is than a KCP, who's almost 1K more expensive. So if you're landing on them, fine. Am I expecting much? No. But at the same time, if that allows you to get to, say, Embiid and Kawhi and Beal or something like that, then I do think it makes sense to mix some of these guys in. Just going back to Chuck's lineup last night, I mean, yeah, he landed on a Javon Carter that did nothing for him, but it did allow him to kind of get to some higher priced plays and take down a tournament. So he's that type of play. Just know that if you're playing one of these guys over a Reggie Jackson, most lineups are going to have Reggie Jackson without these guys. So you kind of need one of them to outscore Reggie. Which seems tough because they're probably not going to play as many minutes, but I'm definitely fine in tournaments on a 3-game slate making those pivots. I think in high-risk contests, it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's go ahead and pivot on into Philly here. So looking at Philly, we kind of already mentioned this squad, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. You kind of mentioned you're prioritizing Embiid. I don't see much else. Like I'm fine getting to Tobias Harris as price tag. Like I would say his ownership is vastly too low. And then I do like Batum specifically on FanDuel. That ownership seems to be a little bit too low as well. But after that, like Kelly Oubre, GPP only play. Everyone else just feels probably a little bit too thin. I mean, Beverly, chalk for a reason on FanDuel. I don't know. I feel like there's not much meat on the bones for Philly in terms of like pivots or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, Beverly's drawing ownership, but with Melton out, we have seen him consistently over 25 minutes. So I think there is merit to using him as value. I think if you're looking at game logs, he's kind of been outperforming his salary, but to see he's only 4% owned on DK is a little bit surprising to me, especially if Reggie Jackson's going to be over 50. Like, again, kind of similar to KCP. If you could find a few extra hundred, I could definitely see Pat Beverly outscoring him. And I mean, yes, you're going to have less salary at other positions, but I don't know. I think he can more than make that up in terms of value. So I do like Beverly on DK at low ownership. It's funny. Ownership matters so much in DFS. Like on FanDuel, I hate that he's 40% owned and he's cheaper over there. Will I have him? Certainly. I'll probably be around where the field's at, like 30-40%. Don't love the play, but on DK at 4%, I actually like that a lot. You brought up Batum. I think he's solid. I do think he's a little bit overpriced. But again, it's tough to find forwards for value tonight. So I'm going to mix him in. And then, I mean, Marcus Morris is someone we've seen have big games from time to time. Not someone you could trust, but he kind of falls into that bucket with Watson and Braun for me, where maybe you're pivoting to lower owned value. But honestly, like you have Beverly as a low owned value play on DK. You have Batum, who's a little bit overpriced, but he's probably going to play close to 30 minutes. So those are two guys that I like on DK at their respective ownerships. I think they're over owned on FanDuel. But at the same time, I mean, it's tough to get away from some of this value. So, yeah, I'm with you on Harris. I think he's under-owned. He is expensive, wide range of outcomes, good high-risk play. But yeah, everyone's off Uber right now, and it's interesting. It's like all the usage is going to Maxi and Embiid,
Yeah.
and I think most people like that for fantasy. But at the same time, I mean, the first games that Melton were out, we saw a ton of ownership on Ubre, we saw a ton of ownership on Harris, and now it's really gone all the way down just because of recent results. It wouldn't be surprising at all to see one of those guys break out here.
Well, yeah, Uber is a guy where if he just gets hot shooting the basketball, we saw it at the start of the season. He just shot the basketball a decent amount from 3-ball range. You know, if he goes 4 for 4 from 3 to start the day, like he's probably going to finish the day with a good game as well. So risk reward there. On a 3-game slate, I could definitely see myself getting to 8% compared to the 1% that people are currently at, but obviously not going crazy with it.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some comments here as well. So we got Jose. Are you focusing on guards or forwards tonight? Honestly, it's tough to say. It really just depends on like who you're starting your builds out with. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Matter.
I mean, it's tough to really say one or the other. I mean, I do think like Kawhi looks really good for the Clippers. You go to any of those guys. I mean, I don't know. I can't really say just guards or just
Yeah.
forwards. Like you kind of want to get in your studs first that you like, and then build a value around them. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think
exactly.
it's a either or necessarily.
We got Unicorn Love saying Fox is overdue, and we will see about that. We're going to get into that game next year. We got a comment in here. It's kind of a funny one. So play Plumlee Unicorn, and then they're calling
The
us
follow-up.
fools for thinking Tice is better. It's the data likes Tice better, and the ownership likes Tice better.
It's the Ty Lue likes Tice better. That's the issue. If I was running the Clippers, I'd probably start Plumlee here. But yeah, I mean, the issue is the head coach likes him better. So yes, maybe Ty Lue is a fool, but we have to chase the minutes. And if Tice is starting, he's going to play the minutes. I mean, who's to say Plumlee plays even 20 here tonight? So I do like Plumlee as a play. I like him fantasy point per minute better than Tice, but you can't guarantee those minutes, especially against a Thunder team that has Chet, and then they're not really big otherwise. So you don't even know that they're going to have to run the backup center out that much. We could see extended run from like, I don't know, Coffee or Powell, something like that. So I do like Plumlee, the player, but for fantasy anyway. But if Tice is starting, like you have to be concerned about those minutes.
Yeah, and I would just say if you want to be on Plumlee more than Tice, by all means go for it. Like you can do that on tonight's slate. It doesn't. It's a weird slate today. Gain that leverage if you want. This question is definitely interesting, and we definitely kind of already answered. I would say Patrick Beverley or Reggie Jackson, and so I'll kind of sum up what you said, and then you can tell me if I heard you right or not. So Patrick Beverley on DraftKings is a good leverage to a very chalky Reggie Jackson. And then Patrick Beverley on FanDuel is pretty chalky. Probably a little bit too thin as a play Reggie Jackson is on FanDuel. Probably better off eating the chalk on FanDuel. So I don't know, is Reggie Jackson a better play? Or sorry, is Patrick Beverley a better play than Reggie Jackson today? Just ownership wise and everything kind of included?
On ZK, I think
That's the question,
I'll
right?
answer it this way. I think Pat Beverley scores more fantasy points tonight, but they're priced almost 1K differently on DK, so that's where you run into the issue. Like, if you still like your lineup and you can make that pivot, I'd rather play Pat Beverley here, especially with a 50% on Reggie Jackson. That seems insane to me. But at the same time, honestly, when we have barely any plays sub 4K that are worth anything, you almost have to play Reggie Jackson in low risk and cash games. So he's kind of the better play just because of his price. But if you ask me who's going to score more fantasy points tonight, I'd pretty confidently say it's going to be Pat Bev.
Yeah. And then this question is funny from James as well. Is there really value from Denver? I mean, no, but like they're the only plays that are like sub 4K that are projected to get like plus 15 minutes. So we're kind of just chasing the minutes there, and they are. One of those three are going to be a point per minute producer tonight. It's just trying to get lucky as to which one it's going to be. Heck, DeAndre Ayton was someone that is pulling in some ownership, projecting 11 minutes. He's low priced. It wouldn't be shocking if he had a good game too. So.
Yeah, I mean, Mo Bamba's out for the Sixers, but they'll probably run Paul Reed behind Embiid. I mean, they definitely want to beat on the floor as much as possible, but I don't know. Usually when you have two stud centers like this, the coaches try to mirror their minutes. So if Embiid plays 32, 33, maybe Reed plays the other 15, and maybe Jordan's in for those other 15 minutes, in which case he would have some upside at his price. But Yeah, again, not something you could bank on, not something we'd even be discussing on a bigger slate, but on a 3-game slate, I mean, you could kind of mix him in as maybe something that you're just hoping has a kind of, I don't know, outlier ceiling game, something like that.
Yeah. So, guys, if you have any more questions, make sure to get those in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those. Obviously, it's a smaller slate, so we got a lot more time to answer those questions. So, we're gonna pivot on into the next game. We got the Suns versus the Kings. It is a 245 over and under 5-point spread. So, I would say a little bit more appealing of a game, but it's harder because obviously there's a kind of more studs in this game. You got Sabonis, you got Fox, you got KD, Bradley Beal. Booker as well, who's not really pulling in too high as a play. I guess he is. FanDuel value. Let me sort by that. That's a little bit better. There we go. Not too much ownership though. 20% own and 8%. He's a little bit priced up. I'm looking at the ownership. It seems to be pretty spread out. Is that just because of pricing? It is more difficult to make the plays work here. And then we'll touch on Fox in a second here because we had a question about Fox.
Yeah, I think the ownership's flat. Like you said, I mean, there are good options here. There's nothing you could feel too great about. I mean, KD's fine if you're getting to him, but it's tough for me not to prefer the Clippers guys for a little bit cheaper. I like Monk, but he's been a little bit inconsistent. I think he might be my favorite King play. Beal finally seems like himself. He's been shooting the ball well. I think he's priced where he should be, though. So I don't know. I think it is just a product of the site's actually got the pricing right here. What's Sabonis' ownership tonight? I'm curious because, yeah, a little bit lower owned than he probably should be here. He's had some massive games lately. I mean, he's almost 2K, or he is 2K cheaper than Embiid. So if you want to go a little bit more balanced, maybe get away from some of the ugly, chalky value guys like Jackson, etc. On DK, it's going to make sense to maybe go to Sabonis. But yeah, I think there's plays here I like. But I don't think anything really stands out as like, oh, I really need to get to this guy. Like Herter's been starting. He's looked really good, but his price is up 1K on both sites. I'll still get to him here. But yeah, the one thing we got to keep an eye on is Keegan Murray. If he's out, then Trey Lyles becomes more interesting. Probably going to have to play 25-ish minutes, which at his price would be appealing on a limited slate. But right now, it's tough to say anything's like core from this game. But I do like Beal. I do like Monk. I do think Herter's fine, albeit a little bit overpriced. And then Grayson Allen, probably a little more popular than he should be here on FanDuel at 46%. Yeah, I don't like that ownership, but I don't know. He's a guy who's capable of a high ceiling too. So I don't know. Again, I'm mixing these guys in. No real core plays for me right now from this game, which doesn't feel great because it is the game with the highest total on the board.
You did mention if Keegan Murray were to sit, I would say we would have core plays. I would say like Herter would become a core play for me. Trey Lyles, to your point, I think he'd become a core play. That to me would make the slate a little bit more easy to manage for sure. And then Monk, even I think he'd be very safe play. He'd probably be the 60% owned though. That'd be the issue, is everyone would become chalk. So I don't know. I'm kind of hoping for Keegan Murray to sit, but also it spreads out the ownership more if he plays. So, and he's a GPP play as well. That's perfectly fine. I will echo, like, Beal does feel like a very safe play at his price tag, as does Monk. Just on tonight's slate, like, safe is always like a widespread word. It's just like it depends on the slate and what. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I don't think there's too much here. I mean, are you fine just moving on into the late night game?
Yeah, I do want to say I'm a little bit surprised by. I think I saw Metu was pretty popular, right?
Yeah, he is 23% owned on DraftKings, 12 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I don't know if we have our boy, the douche in chat, who is our resident Suns fan, but he usually has some hot takes on this front court. But, I mean, it is ownership. I memean, I'm having trouble getting there if this team's healthy. I mean, we've seen Bol mixed in a little bit. Is he out tonight or something? Yeah, I think. Yeah, Bol's out. And, like, again, we're talking about, like, the bottom of the barrel here. But, again, 3-game slate, you kind of have to. But, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that ownership. I don't know. I don't see myself getting there, but I guess with Bol out, maybe it makes some sense. I don't know.
Yeah, again, that's one of those ones where if you're closing out your build and you really kind of like, and you're not going to like your build, but you somewhat like the rest of your build, I'd be fine putting him in there. Like 3.6, you make it work and you kind of just maybe make your next build. Like that's kind of the slate that we have tonight. So let's go ahead and jump into some more questions that we have here. Let's see. Where did we leave off? Let's see. Maybe Jokic gets into foul trouble. I mean, sure, but maybe Embiid gets into foul trouble. We got Jake saying KD smash spots. Hopefully. This is good in question, though. Play KCP or Pat Bev. I'll let you take that one because I feel like you had a hot take on kind of both of them.
I mean, I like both depending on the site. Let me pull up the ownerships here, though.
Yeah.
So KCP, he's drawing more ownership than I thought he would. On FanDuel, wow. Yeah, he's up to 50% on FanDuel now, which is crazy.
I got to hit the refresh then.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're both kind of over-owned, but like if I'm guessing who's going to score more fantasy points between the two, it's KCP. So like I'll rate KCP higher as far as raw points go. But yeah, keep an eye on ownership. Both these guys seem pretty popular on FanDuel now. I think Pat Bev is going to be under-owned on DK, I want to say.
Yeah.
So maybe he makes sense as a tournament pivot there. Yeah, KCP up to 30% on DK. So yeah, I think KCP outscores him more times than not. I prefer him of the two, but definitely keep an eye on ownership. But it does seem like KCP is gaining a lot of steam now all of a sudden.
Then this one's an interesting question as well. Can you play Plumlee and Tice together on FanDuel?
I mean, a 3-game slate, it's tough to say no to anything. I mean, in what world do they both work out, though? So you got to think of it this way. So there's 48 minutes for the center position. They're playing a team that doesn't even necessarily run 48 minutes at center. Like, I don't know that we're going to see OKC run Jalen Williams with a Y as a backup. He played 5 minutes last game. Holmgren even isn't always playing over 30 minutes per night. He's right around 30. So best case scenario, both Tyson Plumlee play 24 minutes. I think they could both hit value in that instance. But if they were playing a bigger team, I'd be more likely to say yes. 3-game slate, I don't think it's insane, but if you're only building a lineup or two, I wouldn't do it. But if you're MMEing and you're just desperate to find value, I don't think it's crazy. But again, if it was a bigger squad, I could see it working out because they're going to have to play 48 center minutes. But tonight, I don't even know that they need to. Like, Tice could play 28. We could see, like, 10 to 15 from Plumlee. And, yeah, whenever Holmgren's off the floor, they could probably leave Powell on. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just not sold on both of them in the same lineup again because they're facing a smaller team in OKC.
Yeah, I think that's fair. This is kind of interesting. So Aaron Gordon, pretty cheap on both sites. We didn't really have any takes on Aaron Gordon or MPJ. Like, to me, I'm kind of fine ending up on one of them. I don't typically like to play them both together. I mean, they're both cheap. They both can easily hit 40 fantasy points. That wouldn't be shocking, but it's like, again, if you're playing Gordon, go for it. Like, that's a play where I'm fine with eating the chalk.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Gordon, 6,200 does feel a little cheap. He's only 61 on DK, so you're looking at virtually the same thing. Yeah, I'd say MPJ probably has a slightly higher ceiling, but he's a little bit more expensive, much lower owned. So, like, in low risk and cash games, I think you go Gordon. If you're looking for the lower owned pivot in high risk or like single entry large field tournaments, maybe you pivot to MPJ for a little bit more if you can find the salary. But yeah, MPJ is only 15% owned on both sites. Gordon's 30 on DK, 40 on FanDuel. So I agree Gordon's the better play point per dollar, but that's just a very clear spot where you can maybe pivot to get a little bit different. But yeah, unlike the centers for the Clippers, I think you could even play these guys in the same lineup if you wanted to. They're both going to play over 30 minutes here, and they do keep a pretty tight rotation when they're healthy.
So it's Pat Bev night. So we have Patrick Beverly or Dort as a question that just came up. So Lou Dort, 5.4, 5.7, not chalky at all. Projected at 28 minutes. Obviously a little bit higher price than Pat Bev. Probably a little bit more difficult to get to, but he is small forward guard eligible, so that does open up a little bit, specifically on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, Dort's unowned. No one's on him. So I think in high-risk contests, he makes some sense. But on DK, Pat Bev's unowned. I think Pat Bev probably has the higher floor, and he's cheaper. So, yeah, I think this sounds insane to say, but I think Pat Bev might be safer. But Lou Dort probably has the higher ceiling for much lower ownership. So, yeah, as a tournament play, I like Dort. But, like, in low risk or cash, if the rest of your lineups, I don't know, different enough, I'd probably just stay with Pat Beverly.
So I think that's a natural pivot into this late night game, the Clippers versus OKC. Again, guys, if you have any more questions, we'll get those in at the end of this segment here. So looking at the game total, 238 for the over and under, 7 point spread. The line moved about 1 at the start of the day. No one is really chalk for OKC. You have Jalen Williams, who had been crushing. He is priced up now. You have Isaiah Joe, who was kind of a logical value play. He is now kind of priced up. Carson Wallace, also a logical value play, who's priced up. But that was because SGA could potentially sit. He is active tonight. So those two plays, unfortunately, probably giving the X to Josh Giddey, maybe a little bit too cheap. And too low owned, but that sounds ugly because we know he doesn't get minutes. Again, not the best. Kendrick Williams, I would say, somewhat interesting. I probably like him the best as one of the better values tonight, point per dollar wise at 3.4, maybe even on FanDuel as well. Kind of what are your thoughts for OKC tonight?
Yeah, I think of all the teams are the lowest owned on the slate on both sites. Like, I don't think there's a single player over 20%. So if you can get to some of these guys, and when I say some of these guys, I mean like SGA, Williams, maybe Holmgren, I do like them as tournament plays. Point per dollar, they're tough to prioritize. But yeah, I mean, Kenrich, not that popular. I never like to play him as chalk. I mean, he's almost 20% owned on DK. Not a guy you could usually expect much from, but I mean, going back to that Javon Carter play last night, I mean, if he allows you to get an extra stud into your lineup, I don't think it's crazy. Just know that you're probably going to get stuck between 10 and 15 fantasy points from him. Yep. But if you're okay with that and it does allow you to get an extra stud or something in your lineup, I think he's fine. Not excited to play him, not expecting 20 fantasy points. But yeah, all these guys are low owned. It is a back-to-back for OKC. I did kind of dig into what they've been doing on back-to-backs. Doesn't seem like anyone's limited. SGA, he's played games where he's 35 back-to-back. Same with Williams. Yeah. Holmgren usually capped around 30. He should be fine. So no real concerns on the back-to-back. I mean, Giddey, on the second he played 26, 30 played 22, and then the 26 he played 25, but then he went up to 29. Last night only played 21. Yeah. Maybe he gets extra run tonight. Mm-hmm. It seems like he kind of flip-flops between the back-to-backs. He's the one player, but I guess his minutes have been inconsistent in general, so I don't want to like really make a flag plan on him, but I actually don't mind Giddey here tonight. Definitely overpriced, but 2% owned on both sides does feel a little bit low. But again, the lowest owned team on a 3-game slate definitely makes sense in tournaments. Can't really call anything here a core play though.
Yeah, I'm looking at his last game against the Clippers, Giddey specifically, 14 minutes, 5 fouls, 20 fantasy points, though. So, like, if he does get us 25 minutes here, could easily get to, like, 35. So, it's just definitely interesting there. So, yeah, weird. Let's go ahead and move on to Clippers there. They're probably a little bit easier. We already kind of mentioned the two bigs. We got Plumlee, we got Tice. That's kind of the big question mark on today's slate. Who do you prioritize? Obviously, the data likes Tice better. From there, though, you got Kawhi Leonard chalk. You got Paul George kind of chalk. They're both too cheap, and it kind of makes sense why they're chalk. The question then becomes, do you play both of them and pass up on James Harden, or do you just kind of mix and match? Everyone's kind of chalk for the Clippers. So, to me, it's just a weird spot because, yes, Man's a little bit too cheap. Powell seems correctly priced to me. I don't really get that ownership, but what is your take on the Clippers tonight? Because I'll probably be in the chalk, but at the same time, you could probably talk me out of some of the plays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna talk you off any of the big three. Like, they're all good plays. I think Kawhi is my favorite from the bunch, just because he's over 50 fantasy points the most consistently. But I mean, we've seen those games from Harden, we've seen those games from George, so they're capable as well. But like, if one was way lower owned, I'd say it makes sense to pivot. But like, they're all within 10% of each other. So I don't know. Kawhi's still my favorite, then George, then Harden in that order. But I think if you're landing on any of them, you're fine. I think you could play two of them in a lineup if you can fit them and feel pretty good about it. But yeah, after these guys and after Tice, it definitely gets a little bit iffy. I mean, Powell's seeing the minutes, pretty inconsistent though. He's fine. I mean, Terrence Mann is cheap enough. But yeah, it's rare we see big games out of him. So I don't really feel good about any of the secondary plays unless you consider Tice a secondary play. Don't have much interest in Westbrook here coming off the bench. I know he had a great game against Minnesota. It feels like more of an outlier to me than anything else. So I don't know. I like the big three here. I like Daniel Tice here as long as he's starting. But yeah, it's tough for me to get excited about this bench right now.
I do want to mention with Westbrook, Zubac was out last game, right, against Minnesota? I'm pretty sure.
I think he left mid-game. I'm trying to remember.
I'll pull it up here. So, no, he was out. He 22 minutes against Memphis.
He didn't play at all. Yeah. So maybe he's...
I don't think that's the case, but would it be shocking if that is the case? Like maybe Westbrook just honestly gets a couple more rebounds, couple more, maybe not
You got me
assists, but
thinking now. Yeah. This is like that situation where like Drummond's out for Chicago and somehow that opens up minutes for Caruso. Like it's
yeah,
weird. They don't play the same position, but the way some of these guys build their rotations, it's like they want the next best player to get more minutes. So maybe in lineups you're not playing Tice or not playing Plumlee, you actually load up on more Russ. And again, OKC's a smaller team, so
yeah.
2 seconds ago I was like, that's an outlier. But like the
I
more I
know.
think about it, man, I think you got me here. I think we're projecting him for 25 minutes, which is actually on
Yeah,
the higher end for him this season. If he's going to play
yeah,
25 minutes, he makes some sense, especially on DK sub 6K, man. I don't know. I'm starting to
I
think
know.
Russ is taking up more of the Zubac rotation than maybe Plumlee will. He's the guy. I kept talking about maybe Powell gets extra run. It's probably
Yeah,
Russ after Tice. So when Holmgren's off the floor, there's going to be a lot of Russ minutes. And if he plays 25 plus tonight, yeah, he makes some sense, man. So I think you talked me
I
into it.
know. Well, it's the pricing difference too on both sides. Like $1,000 cheaper. I I'm a big Russell Westbrook fan. You know, he's probably my favorite basketball player, was when he was in his prime. I have his jersey and whatnot, so I'm definitely biased there.
I feel you.
Yeah, so I don't want my bias to affect any decision making, but I feel like given his ownership right now, 19%, I would say if it gets up to like 35, then it's like okay, we can pump the brakes a little bit. But
No, I
I
think
feel
the
like it's
Zubac thing is huge. Yeah,
yeah,
and like I missed this going in, but it's definitely
I,
a thing.
it might be a thing. I don't want to say it's definitely a thing. It might be a thing.
Yeah,
But it was against wasn't it against Minnesota? Like,
yeah,
yeah, they
they're a
run
big
out.
team, and
Shit, yeah.
it's like I mean, and we're projecting him for 25. I think most of the year we have him around 21, 22.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think I need to mix in some Russ tonight.
just a little.
I mean, yeah, what's he own right now?
19-3. So he's 6.9 for a salary on FanDuel, 3% owned there, 5.9 on DraftKings salary, 19% owned. So that
I'm
does feel kind of low for 25 minutes for him.
I'm going to be mixing in some Russ, and if it
Yeah.
kills me, it kills me. But again, I think Zubac being out matters more for him than maybe people are giving him credit for.
But so is this a situation where, like, how do you prioritize it then? Because like I still think I will go one of Tice or Plumlee in a build, but is it maybe more just one of Westbrook, Tice, or Plumlee in a build?
No, I think you could play two. I don't think I
Yeah,
want two of the bigs. I think in lineups with Plumlee, you don't want Tice because if Plumlee has a
yeah,
good game, something probably went wrong for Tice. But I'd be
yeah,
comfortable having Westbrook in either of those lineups because we're giving him extra minutes from Zubac. And again, we have the centers projected totaling 40 minutes. There's 48 minutes in a basketball game, so who's to say those 8 extra minutes aren't just going to Russ? So yeah, I like Russ here. I still think Tyson's fine. We have him around
yeah,
24 minutes. He's around a fantasy point per minute guy. If Plumlee were to suddenly start, I agree that I think he's the better offensive
yeah.
player than Daniel Tice, but I don't know that he's going to see that much run. We have him at 16.7 minutes right now. So I trust Tice the most of the group. He's super chalky, though. And yeah, I do want to get to some Russ. I'm intrigued.
Sorry, sorry.
I know. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but definitely intrigued.
So let's jump into some comments. I'll kind of rapid fire because we're almost up against it. Want to give you guys somewhat of a first look build here. So Kessler, Edwards, if Murray sits, I mean, we'll see what the data says. That's one of those situations where I typically like to defer to the data. We have Jose saying, please rank your core plays on DraftKings. I know I play more on DraftKings. I'll kind of answer
There
this.
you go.
I think I'm prioritizing the two Clippers bigs, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. To me, those are my core plays right now. I will eat the chalk on Reggie Jackson and Daniel Tice right now. Maybe that changes up at lineup block. Maybe I think it's Jayhawk in the Discord chat. Maybe he gives us some hot takes that switches me off of that. But for now, that's it. I'll let you. Maybe we can both hammer this one. So we got Nick kind of wondering sub 3K play. That's the problem. Obviously, there's not any good ones. Reggie Jackson's one of them. And then really just the rest of Denver. We got Metu. And then we also have, who else was it? Plumlee. And then there's one other one. Williams.
On DK, I think it has to be Jackson, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Man.
Peyton Watson now 40% owned on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising. I mean, I think people are just going to mix these guys up. Like
Yeah.
most people, most of the Sharks who are FMEing aren't going to play 60+% Reggie Jackson. They'll probably cap that around 40ish, maybe get more Braun, get more Watson. But yeah, I think it is Reggie, unfortunately. I don't mind Plumlee in lineups without Tice,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's Reggie by default. It's just a tough slate to find value right now because
Yeah.
Morris is over 4K, right? I was going to say maybe
I
him.
think
Yeah.
it's 4.1. If I
Yeah,
recall correctly.
and I don't feel great about him. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're kind of stuck there.
All right, so we got thoughts on DraftKings. So Beal and Booker versus Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I feel like I just answered that question. I like the Clippers a little bit more there.
Yeah, I agree. They've just been more consistent, higher floors. In the big Beal games, it's almost like Booker's doing more facilitating. So, I don't know. I think you get the higher ceiling between Leonard and George, but I do imagine they're more expensive as a pair.
Back to back for Embiid, yeah, but he's good to go. So we got Courtney kind of asking this question. We can do that real quick. Low risk, yes.
Yeah,
One
here's the
second,
thing.
Nick.
Yeah, the thing with low risk is it's going to cut out the value plays. So,
Yeah.
yes, you could build that way. If you could build a lineup using only low risk plays, then yeah, play it in your low risk contest. But the thing is, I think it cuts off the OF index at 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
So a way to do that is maybe just sort by value. And then if you're not seeing something on like the front page, I would maybe not use them in a low risk contest,
It's
something
tough
like that.
today.
But it's going to cut off your value plays when you do check that low risk spot.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind.
So we had a question about Nurk tonight, specifically for FanDuel. I don't know. I feel like he's tough to get to at his price tonight, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's not that many centers to choose from. I think if you're mixing him in, he's fine. It's not a terrible matchup against Sabonis. So yeah, if you're landing on him, why not? I'm kind of neutral on him. He's only 20% owned though, probably a little lower owned than he should be. Again, I'm taking a huge stand on Embiid. That's kind of taking me off a lot of the other centers, but Nurk only slightly higher owned than Embiid on FanDuel. So I do think it makes some sense to pivot. And I did just want to touch on the Embiid back-to-back thing. This is the front end of a back-to-back. He has no minutes limit. We did just get
he
word.
played yesterday. He played yesterday, right? Or
No,
did he
the
not?
Houston game. When did they play Houston? That was.
I thought they played. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong here.
No, you're right. You're right. It is a back-to-back. He only played 31 minutes though.
It was early. It was an early game.
Yeah, and we got word from the coach there, Nurse. He said that there's no minutes limit on him tonight. So that's enough for me to not worry.
It's the fact that he played 31. I wonder if he would have played 38 if they would have sat him today or, monitored his minutes.
Yeah. I'm going through his back-to-backs. I know he's working back from an injury, but it doesn't seem like there's any major limitations on him. And obviously there's some rivalry here between him and Joker. I mean, I don't know. I think he wants to be on the floor as much as possible.
So just MVP-wise, I think Jokic is like number 1 right now. And I'm a Bucks fan, but I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Like Giannis was like 4. I think Embiid was higher than him, but I'm like, all right, is that because they're playing each other tonight? Like, if one of them has a good game,
that's how they do it, man. They market
Jokic
it that
has
way.
a good game. Yeah, it's smart. So
I think mine's SGA.
Yeah, he's second. So that's
where would they be without him? Like, that's where I'm at. I mean, you could say the same for all these teams, but like the issue with Embiid, I mean, there's like a limit. Like if he misses, I think 6 or 7 more games, he's not even eligible for the MVP. He's putting up better numbers this year than he was last year as the MVP, where he kind of whined his way into it. And now that he's actually going to deserve it, he might not get it, which is pretty funny. But yeah, I mean,
that's how it works in the NBA.
We probably do 2 hours on the MVP race. But the
know.
Thunder are the 2 seed in the West right now. On SGA's back, he's been amazing. I think the top point per game in terms of real points in the league. So yeah, I like SGA right now. But again, it's kind of voter fatigue too. Like Giannis definitely deserves consideration. So does Joker. So does Embiid. But once guys win one, it's really tough to give them another. But yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it is. All right, so we got a couple. We got Dort or Powell. I'm just gonna say Powell there. Make the executive decision there. Let's see. Any more questions? Best team stack for today's slate: Clippers or Phoenix? Pricing wise, it's Clippers. Ceiling wise, probably Suns.
Yeah, I mean, I like the matchup for the Suns. The Kings do pace up opponents. Thunder's actually pretty decent defense, so yeah, I'll go Suns. And yeah, I think it's easier to get to multiple pieces because if you're stacking Clippers, you're going to want
Yeah.
that big three. They're expensive. So
And then last question here, and then we'll get into kind of a first look build here. Just real quickly though, not sure if Jayhawk's going live on the Discord. I'll just pull that up here for you guys
he's
just
at
to hit on
7,
it.
I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's later because the start time.
Yep.
Okay.
I keep screwing that up when I'm on Discord. I go half hour early by mistake, but I
Yep.
think
Yep.
Jayhawk knows better.
Yeah. So I'll do the plug anyway. So it's always a half an hour before lineup lock, the Discord chat, unless Nick decides to mess up and go an hour earlier, but it kind of is what it is. But more information for you guys. But that to join is going to be in the link in the description below. Again, we typically will always go live 30 minutes before lineup lock. It's typically following this video. Obviously, today's a little bit different. We like to keep this video at the same time each and every slate. So let's go ahead and get into kind of our first look build here. And then if there's any more questions at the end, we'll kind of touch on that. So the biggest kind of question is, who are the starting points tonight? Do we go value? Do we go studs? That's kind of the biggest question for DraftKings specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing heavier on FanDuel tonight.
Yeah.
I don't like the value, so I think we
Yeah.
almost go like mid-range studs. I think Kawhi is a great play here at 8,500. That's probably be my starting point, and then it sounds insane, but I'd probably go KCP next.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you said you wanted to eat the Reggie chalk. I don't mind that. Like we're gonna need the value.
Yeah, and then we could go KCP still. I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really going to cut into each other much, so I'd be fine with that.
And he's cheap enough. He's like what I call a shoulder shrug play, like giving us like 5x. Yeah, we're fine with it.
You need the shots to fall, but I do think he can get his here.
Yeah. And then I feel like because we talked up both of them, we kind of need to play both of them just for the sample build, even though it's ugly. And we also are eating some of the chalk. We're playing Westbrook and we're playing Patrick Beverly. Exactly. Is that fine or just one of them, or kind of what do you think?
Let's play them both. Let's roll the dice here on the controversial guards. And it's funny, they hate each other too, right? Russ and Pat.
Yes, you're right. Well, who knows? That could be all for sure. You never know. But then power forward wise, obviously we're going to be kind of strapped for salary. I believe Tice, we kind of need to play at the center spot now, which is kind of ugly. You agree?
Or? Yeah. I mean, I think he's fine as long as he's starting.
But now we have enough to pay up, though. So, like, we could go Kevin Durant. We could go Paul George. But power forward-wise, it's kind of ugly. You know, it's Jalen Williams, Tobias Harris, Kevin Durant, maybe the Denver Bigs. That's where it gets interesting. Or I think that's maybe why Peyton Watson's chalk, because people are just punting.
Yeah. I don't love the Watson punt. If Keegan Murray's out, I do think Lyles makes some sense there. I don't love the price, but yeah, I mean, I'd be fine going to Jalen or Durant there, but we're going to be left with just forward, so I don't know.
Let's see. I mean, this is fine. Like, so it'd be Paul George. So we go KD and Paul George. Like, I actually think this lineup's decent for the 3-game slates. Gain some leverage, eating some chalk.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, there's some iffy spots there. Tice at his price doesn't feel great, but what it gets you to, I do actually like a lot. And again, Russ has some upside here. Only eating a little bit of chalk with Jackson, etc. So yeah, solid build, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like small differences. We could probably get to Beal from Westbrook if we wanted to. Small stuff like that. Obviously, drop down from Paul George to maybe a slightly, I don't know, safer play. Monk's there as well. We could easily get to him. So small differences we can make.
Yeah, if you didn't want to play Tice and you wanted to go with my Embiid stand, you could maybe pull George and Durant, go Embiid, and then go more value at those forwards. You'd have to pull Paul George too, I think.
Yeah.
There's no way he's going to fit. Yeah.
So Trey Lyles hoping maybe that.
Yeah, that's kind of wishful thinking. I don't mind it.
He's still okay.
Yeah, or even like a Batum, who I don't love, but he makes some sense.
Let's actually see that because we're kind of in a dead spot.
Yeah. Like, I don't love Batum at 5K, but again, we're jamming in Embiid with Kawhi. Love Aaron Gordon, so that actually looks pretty good too.
Right, so we're getting some decent builds. I do want to try real quickly finagling it so we can get Monk in there, because I do feel like he is kind of a pretty good play at his price tag, and so maybe get off of Westbrook a little bit, maybe go more chalk, and then probably off of Pat I don't know.
I don't think we need to play Pat Bev in all of them, so I'm fine
Yeah,
getting off of him.
Braun is a little chalk. I would ideally I would want to eat the Watson chalk at this point, but maybe we
Yeah,
could.
yeah. I
Let's
mean,
try
we're
that.
different enough. I mean, if you want to stick with the field, I also think you could maybe come off KCP for someone else too. Like when we
Yeah,
bring up these guys that we like to get different, like if you're building 3 builds, you don't want to have that guy to get different in all 3 builds. So like
yes,
KCP is not a guy I would want in all three necessarily.
yeah. It's just for example purposes. We
Yeah,
try
yeah,
to
yeah.
give you guys apply what we're saying throughout the video. So let's see here. So we'll see if there's any more questions. Then we'll begin out of here. So Durant or Kawhi Leonard, GPP.
I mean, what are they owned? I mean, they're owned pretty
Yeah,
much the
that's
same. Oh, if it says pretty much the same. I mean, Kawhi's cheaper. I'll go Kawhi just because
it's
he's a
more
little bit
flexible
cheaper.
too. Small forward eligible as well on DraftKings. So that
Yeah, yeah. I'll
slightly
give
different.
Kawhi the edge, but yeah, use that extra salary to upgrade some of the chalky value if you haven't.
Lineup for late night FanDuel, please. So
That's
the reason
very
why we don't,
specific.
yeah, the reason why we don't have FanDuel pulled up is because like their user interface for like streaming is just like all over the board. It's harder to pull up. Where DraftKings, everything is like centered. So it's a little behind the curtain stuff there. So that's kind of why. Let's see here.
What was the next question?
I don't. Oh, this is Paul George. So Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Embiid on DK. I think you can make that work. Didn't we just kind of make that work, or no?
We were close. Yeah, you're just gonna have to play a couple guys you don't feel great about, but again,
yeah.
that could work out. Yeah, it's possible, but yeah, just hold your breath.
All right, so let's see here. Any more? Who's chalk value tonight? We got a lot of chalk value. I'll just sort by chalk here right now. This will probably change. Jackson, Watson are pretty much the big chalk. Tice, if you consider that a value, he's chalk, and then Plumlee pulling in some ownership as well. Daniel House is out. I mean, that's 13 minutes.
Springer?
That doesn't. Yeah, maybe.
First thought, or Springer's out too. Is he? I don't know. Maybe Marcus Morris. I don't know. This is me grasping at straws here. Like, can we get one extra value play out of this team? It's not like I wanted to play Daniel House. Let me check this injury report.
Yeah.
I thought I saw Springer's name on it too, or he was with the G League or something.
Yeah, I haven't seen that pop up just yet. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. Springer is
No,
out
he's
for
out.
sure.
Yeah, he has
Okay.
tendonitis in his ankle.
It's
So
just not updated.
with House out as well, no Covington either. Maybe that
I mean,
secures minutes for Morris.
yeah, Morris and probably a little bit more for Batum is kind of my initial thoughts.
I like Batum. And yeah, the thing with Morris too is if you can get him on that second unit or any minutes without Maxey and Embiid, he does get pretty aggressive offensively. So he's a guy who could maybe get hot for you. Again, low floor. But if you get over 20 minutes for Morris, I do think he's fine at low ownership. So yeah, he'd be the maybe one guy who benefits. But what it really does is secure minutes for some of these dicey guys like Beverly and Batum, I think.
This is a good plug for the model. Like once the minutes update for that, like that'll tell us really what to do there. A lot of the times that's what it comes down to. And so
Yep.
I'm gonna be monitoring that. If it gets to 20, I'm playing him. How many high owned players do you guys play on small slates? So I would phrase this in the sense that you don't want to fade too many chalky plays on a small slate. You typically want to build based off of the chalk and get unique in one or two spots, which is kind of what we did by going Patrick Beverly and Westbrook. Everyone else was basically chalk there. So I would almost say the chalkier the better. You're always going to probably close out your build with someone that's not that high owned on a small slate. What are your kind of thoughts there?
I think it depends on the contest more than anything.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing cash games, like you almost don't want any low owned plays. If you're playing a large field contest, I think you want one or two lower owned, but what's high owned and what's low owned kind of depends on the slate. Like on these slates, like if you sort by ownership, the front page of the model, everyone's 20% owned or higher. So if you're getting anyone that's like sub 20%, like two or three of those guys, you're going to be different than most of the field. On a bigger slate, like I think the bottom of the front page will be like 10, 15%. So it really depends on the slate. But yeah, you asked about a small slate. I'd say don't limit the number of high-owned plays you're playing. More so, focus on the number of low-owned plays you're playing. And it really depends. The bigger the contest, the more you probably want to mix in 2, 3, 4 of these guys that are 20% or lower.
And then just last one here. Rand says he would rather play Monk than Patrick Beverly. I think we both would. Yeah,
he's just 2K more. That's the issue. Yeah, he's 25. I love Monk here much more than Beverly. And the only reason we're hyping up Pat Beverly is because he's cheap and there's no value on the slate, and he's lower owned than Reggie Jackson, who's super popular. So it's not that we love Pat Beverly to play. It's just he kind of makes sense today, given what we're dealing with.
So I think that is pretty much it, guys. We covered it pretty well. Head on over to the Discord chat in about 20 minutes here. Do you have any closing thoughts? Or
no, just keep an eye on the Keegan Murray thing. I think that's the one piece of news we're waiting on. If he's in, he's a fine play. But if he's out, that's probably going to create more minutes for someone like Trey Lyles, who's going to be interesting as value. Maybe as a pivot off of Tice, or you could use him with Tice. Or, I don't know, Harrison Barnes has been terrible, but that could actually up the ceiling for someone like Harrison Barnes. So just keep an eye on that situation. Again, if Murray's out, you probably get to a little bit more Trey Lyles. If Duarte were to start, I wouldn't even want to play Duarte sub 4K personally. But yeah, just keep an eye on that. And then we expect Daniel Tice to start, but we have seen this situation where we think a backup center is going to go and then he doesn't. So if Plumlee does get the start for Tice, that's going to definitely concern me against a smaller team in OKC. And the more I think about it, the more I dig into it, I do think Russ is going to see extra minutes here with Zubac out. I know they play different positions, but the way the NBA works now is kind of positionless. They want the best guys on the floor more often than not. So, yeah, I think Russ gets a nice little bump here.
Perfect. That'll do it for today's live stream. I appreciate everyone being here at the same time tomorrow. Make sure to hit the like button when you guys join us tomorrow. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Take care.